So, our next session, so we've heard some really fabulous science this morning, and a lot of our goal is to translate that into understandable messages for the consumer. And so we're getting our way to the communication side of the program. And our next session is the power of storytelling to impact change. We heard over and over again, and a lot of our conversations within the seafood industry is how do we break through to the consumer? We have almost 500 species available commercially to be purchased in the market. So it's not eat chicken or eat beef or eat pork, eat seafood. There's 500 different varieties to choose from, and so it can be confusing. And so how do we relate that to the consumer and make sure that we talk and understand from their point of view? And the session was going to be led by Mr. Hugh Welsh, and so he's not able to join us. And so Ms. Liz Calvez is here with us from DSM North America. And she is the regional manager of external communications and will take on the valid effort of helping us to tell the story to impact change. And then at the end, we'll have a couple minutes for questions as well. So, Liz?
Linda, I heard that Norm Salem was eager to step in for Hugh.
I'm from DSM.
Norm, if you want to come on up. No, I'm kidding. A few of us were vying for this opportunity here. I'm definitely very grateful to be here. Sorry that Hugh couldn't be here with all of you. I know that he's very vested in the success of the Seafood Nutrition Partnership and the industry, and he is a really dynamic and fantastic speaker. So I will do my best to live up to his standards this afternoon. So as mentioned, I am a regional manager of communications for DSM, and I recently celebrated my 7th year anniversary with them. And when I think about when I started with the organization back in 2012, I came in actually as an HR business partner. And I was trying to recruit people to the organization. And it was a little bit difficult. People, in going to different networking events, I would say, I work for DSM. And people would say, oh, you must get a great discount on shoes. And I'm like, no, DSM, not DSW. And then people would say, what do you do? And there was so many things to convey about DSM as a company. But at that time, we were not in a place where we had a really clear narrative. I would hear colleagues say, we're the largest manufacturer of vitamins, or we make the strongest fiber that goes into fishing nets and into bulletproof vests for first responders. But an overarching narrative was missing from our organization. And we saw that opportunity, and the communications team set out to create messaging that would enable our 23,000 people around the globe to be ambassadors for DSM, its brand, and for everyone to be able to tell the story of our company. I won't go through the entire story, but depending on where I am, I might begin by telling people, well, it's a little bit ironic that DSM actually started out as a coal mining company in 1902, and now here we are, heavily invested in renewable energy. We have the second largest solar field here in Belvidere, New Jersey. We also have solar or renewable energy consortiums around the globe. So there again, it kind of elevates who we are as an organization and takes us out of talking about very specific products and talking about larger concerns that are out there in the world. So in essence, we talk about solving the world's greatest problems. And so I look at all of you and I think about the industry that you're involved in, right? You're involved in nutrition and seafood. And another thing about me is that not only am I a communications manager, but I'm a mother of 3 young boys, and I'm also the caregiver of a 78-year-old father. And so for me, I have a lot of interesting decisions to make every day. And a lot of them are around what are we going to eat? And how do I ensure that my children get the right nutrition for what stage they are in life, right? I have an 8-year-old, then I have this tween, And then I have a 15-year-old who's already a couple of inches taller than I am, impressively. And then I'm also caring for, as I mentioned, my 78-year-old dad, who unfortunately came down to this area last year, ate a lovely meal at the Rusty Scupper, and then proceeded to have a heart attack. And so trying to re-educate him on what it means to have a healthy plate. I think that night he enjoyed some coconut shrimp, and I think that that's great that he tried to have some seafood. But I was trying to educate him that maybe he'd want to pull back from eating as many fried foods as he does. So it's been a year of educating or re-educating my family. But I look at all of you and I think about the opportunity that you have to create a narrative over the whole industry. Because I think my challenge is, I know I can go to Linda for sure, but just kind of, where do I go to get good information? Who can I trust, right? There is no brand out there that I say, oh, I know that brand and I trust that brand for seafood. Or I know that organization and I trust the narrative that's coming out of that organization. And when I talk to friends of mine or colleagues and coworkers, I think a lot of us feel sort of similarly that we want to trust. And I liken this to the arguments I have with my father as to whether or not egg yolk is good for you, right? Or margarine. He was raised in an era where you were supposed to eat margarine, you weren't supposed to eat egg yolks, and here I come saying, well, no, the guidelines have changed. What you should put on your plate has changed. And so re-educating people, and I myself need a re-education, right? That can be difficult. So how do you message out to people, to communities, to people who are busy and want to do the right things by their family, desperately want to do the right thing by their family, but have that challenge of where do I go to get the right information, and when I go to the supermarket, how do I know what to choose? And then finally, another big step is in how to prepare it. So again, I understand that there are many stakeholders in the industry in the room coming from different parts, and I would strongly encourage for there to be some sort of overarching narrative around the seafood industry and what's happening within it, so that people become aware that things are changing within the industry itself. Thinking back to a discussion I had a few weeks ago with a friend, people always comment to me like, DSM, you guys really do everything, don't you? Because this person hadn't heard me talk about Veramaris before, and I was talking about Veramaris and the fact that it has higher levels of omega-3, and that will enable salmon to have higher levels of omega-3. And she said, well, wild-caught fish is better. Point. And nothing I said was going to convince her of anything different. I guess I could have pulled out, some sort of card from my wallet or opened up a PowerPoint presentation. But that's not going to convince her. I could show her stats and stats and stats. That's not going to convince her. My belief is that a story would convince her. Something that is engaging, something that appeals to what it is that she's trying to do, which is in essence do the right thing by the environment, but also do the right thing by her children. So again, there's lots of challenges, but as we all know, challenges can become opportunities if you come at them from the right direction. So just going back a little bit to the way that we manage to create narratives within DSM, I think we saw the opportunity again to go away from being a material science and health company to kind of breaking it down, saying health, nutrition, and sustainable living. And there again, I think just that shift in language made people change their perspective about who we are. And then essentially we did a full force campaign, right? Every opportunity that I had, I was out there talking about DSM to reporters, to magazine editors, and ultimately we did end up as #2 in Fortune magazine. And that created tremendous visibility for us and enabled our employee populations to leverage that, go out and talk about it. That was like a leading piece that we had for at least 2 years running now. And again, it fosters trust because there's an external organization saying this organization is really innovative and it's a leading company changing the lives of people around the globe through its innovation. So as much as we can, though, we also try to take other organizations along with us. So our partners. So if I think about the Seafood Nutrition Partnership, right, that's someone that we want, or an organization rather, that we want to amplify and talk about. Or we bring our customers along so that we're talking about not just what we're doing as an organization, but what other companies are doing in this space. And thinking that if we help the sea rise, then all the boats float a little higher as well. And I think that that's important for this industry because it has, on the one hand, a tremendously positive reputation. I think people are aware of how important omega-3s are. I think people are aware that fish is a healthy protein. But there is some confusing messaging out there about where to get it from, and the question around whether or not it should be wild caught or whether or not it should be farmed fish, things like that. So what else can I tell you about the impact of change and storytelling? It's important in devising what your narrative is and the plan sort of for rolling it out, for explaining this to the people who you want to tell your story. And I think that this is actually, for me, was at least the fun part about devising this training was that we brought people into our organization and we did a lot of improvisation and a lot of playful stuff, so people had fun. And that made it memorable for them, that they had a really good time, that they learned some key skills, especially in terms of just the physicality of being on stage, learning how to stand up and relax themselves and smile, some key points around posture, some key points around using your hands effectively, things that you should and shouldn't do. But the most important thing was that people walked away being able to say, I work for this company and here it is, here's what we do, and something that we call like a snackable soundbite, maybe 30 seconds long, that would then, no matter who we're speaking to, engage them and allow them to ask us questions. Because I think storytelling, you know, if you think about it, it has this very natural arc to it. Typically, there is some sort of crisis or inciting incident, then there's a little bit of drama leading up to this apex moment, typically where there's a hero and the crisis is solved, and then there's the resolution of it. And those are important stories to go out and tell, but they also have to typically be pretty quick. And if I think about engaging consumers, what do you have? You have maybe 15, 30 seconds to really engage people, especially if you're using the media that seems to be the most used these days, which is social media, right? Or advertisements for other places. When I think about changing the family lifestyle, if you will, I didn't go and read white papers. I did that when I was considering vaccinating my children, and I made myself crazy and eventually just went to my doctor and was like, please, please give me advice because I don't know what to do. And that was in a day when that industry was in crisis, right? And still is a little bit. There's a lot of people who say do it, a lot of people who say don't. But I basically scrolled through Facebook and saw advertisements for different companies that would send meals to my house. Pre-portioned, every single ingredient is already in there, and they tell me exactly what I need to do to make it. Simple and easy, and I understand the benefits of what it is that I'm bringing into my house, and then I feel good serving that to my family. I feel proud. I did something good, and it wasn't this really arduous effort. And I just think about the simple story that was told in that advertisement when I first saw it. Meal planning and delivery of that meal for you is going to be super easy. Click, boom, done. And that is essentially the state of affairs out there today. People want to get the information that they need and be able to make a decision really quickly and then purchase. And so I understand earlier today that there was a lot of talk about the deep science that goes behind all the nutrition that is contained within seafood. So I look at this audience and think, how are you going to convey that? How are you going to convey that there have been thousands of people collecting, aggregating, analyzing this data, and come down with some facts? How can you convey that? How can you convey that there is a tremendous amount of science behind this? But you're not going to make people work that hard to understand that science. And then share with them the benefits of the fact that that's already been done for them, and then essentially where they can go in order to find the food itself, the seafood itself, the different varieties that are out there, and then also potentially just recipes and things like that, so that it's easier for people to make that transition from, I think I'll make another box of chicken nuggets, to, oh wow, we're going to have scallops and some asparagus for dinner. Does that make sense? Yep. So I think we have, sorry, that timer there for me, I have 4 more minutes left to talk, and then we'll get to the 10 minutes, right? Okay, perfect. So what else? I'm trying to think of the impact of storytelling. If I think internally to the organization and the shift in the level of engagement of employees. So as I mentioned to you guys earlier, I started out in HR. And then I made the transition over to communications. And in part because I felt like HR was doing a tremendous job in changing the organization, but we were really, really focused on this systems change. It was like, we have to transform the systems and make the managers accountable for paid time off and accounting for different things. And I was definitely at a place in my career where I felt like, well, I really want to do more than just this. And I think, I mean, quite frankly, it was a little bit of a struggle. There was a lot of struggle internally in the organization, the way people perceived HR. They were like, you should be managing this kind of stuff. Why should I, as the manager, be managing these kinds of things? So I was feeling a little bit frustrated and a little bit burnt out by it. And that's actually when Hugh approached me and said, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for you within DSM. Why don't you come work on the communications team? And I said to him, well, thanks, I appreciate you thinking about me, but I can find you somebody who's really well qualified for that role. I don't think it's me. And he kind of laughed and he said, that's weird, an HR person putting a ceiling on herself. I was like, oops, you're 100% right. So I came back a few days later and we talked a little bit more about the role, and he said, Liz, you know, this is really just a natural transition, and what I want you to do, sure, externally I want you to tell this story, but watch what's going to happen when we're telling this story internally and people get jazzed about it. Because at that point in time, I would go outside of DSM to different events, external events, and there were tons of people in industry who knew us and would talk super positively and be like, you guys are doing great work, and especially in sustainability. and we see what you're doing with renewable energy, we see what you're doing with bio-based plastics. But then inside the organization, there was a little bit of friction there, right? We were this company that was undergoing significant internal transformation. And so when we started to roll out this storytelling training, the mood of the company changed. It wasn't about transformation as a grind anymore. It was a vision. This is where we're going. And that changed people sort of shifted and thought, okay, so we once were DSM, and we acquired all these different companies, and now we're DSM. But this is what DSM is about. It's about doing something meaningful. And so just shifting the acronym, right? Because it stands for Dutch State Minds. And although I'm sure that that has tremendous meaning over there in Heerlen, the Netherlands, I don't know that it actually captured the hearts and minds of our employees. But when the term do something meaningful was coined, and we told everybody, go out there and do something meaningful today. Whatever that is for you in your role or in your community, do those things, because it will really, really further what it is that we're doing as a company. And you as an individual matter, and then collectively, we're going to change the world. And essentially, that is what's happening. And I think that witnessing that in the span of 7 years, right? Sometimes it feels like it's a really long time, and other times I can't believe how quickly it went by, and I'm honestly astounded by the changes that the organization has undergone internally. But then I go to cocktail parties now, and people don't mistake me for working for a shoe company. It's kind of a nice feeling. So with that, I will open it up for any questions that folks have in the room. No?
Well, if you'll stay up here for
Sure.
So last night, we were recognizing a couple of our supporters for just helping us launch. And Hugh was not here, but since you're here, we're going to present this to you.
Thank you very much.
Have this.
On behalf of Hugh.
Yeah. Look at Sandy.
Thank you. I should probably put that behind.
Oh, you want to come close? So you can have it on your desk.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.